Last week I mentioned that there seems to be less people out walking at this point in our pandemic journey than there was earlier on when things first closed down. I think a number of us early on were so hopeful that the pandemic would soon be over, maybe a few weeks or a month or two at the most. Hopeful that we could get some exercise and lose a few pounds, since we had found all of this extra time where we didn't need to commute to work, didn't need to go out as much. All of this extra time that we had found during the day. Hopeful that somehow we could view this pandemic as a hurdle that we could jump over and then move on with the rest of our journey. It's reported that the average walking pace is about 3 miles per hour, and the average jogging pace is somewhere between 4 and 6. That would make the trip from Emmaus to Jerusalem just over a couple hours walk. Or maybe just over an hour if you decided to jog that far. Well, the distance is probably one that would leave my legs tired. It would also be perfectly doable. And there are some days where it would just seem nice to go out and do that. Go out for a couple hours and have a walk. On a sunny day like today, where it's not too hot, there's a gentle breeze, the birds are chirping sweetly in the trees. It would be ideal to be able to make that journey. Well, we may look at the idea of walking 7 miles in a day and feel some sort of desire, longing, hope. And the reality of today's reading, the 2 disciples weren't very hopeful. Actually, they had lost all hope. Jesus was to be the Messiah and have an earthly rule, and yet he was crucified. Their hopes for him had been crushed. The ideals that they held about the place of the Messiah in their community and what Jesus could do were lost. How many of us feel lost today? That our hope in Jesus, hopefully still reigns. But our hope in the pandemic being a hurdle that we could jump over is long gone for many of us. Sure, the vaccines are here and more are coming. And politicians tell us that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. All we have to do is stay safe a little bit longer, get everyone vaccinated, and by the summer, the world will look much more like it used to than it does now. And yet somehow in our experience of our hope being lost during this time, we begin to wonder if that light that the politicians tell us about is at the end of the tunnel. We begin to wonder if that light isn't really just a train. What we thought was going to be an afternoon walk for the pandemic has turned into a day-long marathon. What we thought might leave us with sore legs has stretched on. And now we feel the blisters on our feet. We feel our lack of hydration. We realize that we started out on this pandemic marathon so unprepared. And we know we need something to carry us that little bit further. You know, that point in the race where maybe we need some goodwill, where we need someone to be standing with a bit of orange or a bit of banana, that little hit of something sweet, that little hit of potassium that can help encourage us to keep going to the end. It's in the midst of this type of moment, this type of trouble and difficulty, that the disciples are experiencing this moment of loss of hope. In this moment, Jesus steps in. The disciples, as I said, have no hope left. And Jesus arrives in that moment of hopelessness and opens the scriptures to them again. He offers them not a banana nor an orange, but he offers them bread, just like he had done in the upper room not so long ago. That bread inspires the disciples to make the journey back to Jerusalem. It inspires them with new hope within themselves, and it inspires them to share that new hope back with the community that they are in. One of my big beliefs about Jesus is that he called his disciples to see things differently, and that he still calls us to see the world differently than we do at times. It's easy to lose hope at times when things go wrong, when things get delayed, when things are pushed back. It's easy at the moment to lose hope when we see case counts rising, to see vaccines that are not here, or to see vaccines that are sitting in freezers and not administered to people as soon as we'd like. It's easy to lose hope when we see restrictions being tightened. We do begin to see that light at the end of the tunnel, not as the other side, but as that train. Once the disciples understood the scriptures differently, though, their hope returned. The evening darkness that was approaching was no longer an issue for them. They returned to Jerusalem right away. So let us try and see this world differently. Let us not focus on the vaccine delays, but see the fact that there are vaccines here and that things are being rolled out. Requirements are changing. More and more people are getting vaccines. Let us not focus on the restrictions being tightened. Let us see that we have learned how to care for our community again. And at times that does mean staying away. But we do so because we so care for people. Let us not see this pandemic as a hurdle. Let us see that we are truly weathering through a marathon, a much longer race than we had ever expected. And we have come this far, and God has been with us. For our road, that we are on this journey with Jesus through this pandemic, is a road of hope. One that has not the light at the end of the tunnel being the end of the pandemic, but our light. Our light at the end of all of this is the true light of the world, the light of Christ, the light that no darkness can overcome. the light of hope in our hearts, in our prayers, in our lives. It is the light of new life, the light of new beginnings, the light of Christ. And for that, we give thanks for today. Amen.